Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this, our 9th episode of the Canada Talks Electric Cars webinar that's brought to you by the Electric Vehicle Society. My name's Tim Burrows, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's webinar. A lot of you I know are regulars to this webinar, and we appreciate that very much, but I also know that we have some visitors tonight for the first time, and for their benefit, let me mention that membership in EV Society is free as an associate member, or $30 if you want full membership. And if you're a senior like I am, it's only $20 a year. And every membership helps. So I'll let you know that today's webinar is going to be recorded, and it will be available on our YouTube site for viewing at a later time. All of the guests here tonight have joined with their microphones muted and their cameras turned off. We will only go for 60 minutes. We'll end the webinar sharply at 8:30. So you're encouraged to ask questions of our guest speaker while he's presenting using the Q&A function. And remember that you can upvote any other question you see there that you are also interested in hearing. And if we know that a lot of people want an answer to one of those questions, it'll get pushed to the top of the list, and we have a better chance of getting to you if we're short on time. Today's webinar, which is about Project Arrow, the project that launched 1,000 vehicles, will be an interesting one, I'm sure. With all the questions that come in, we've asked Laura Bryson, one of our great EV Society members, to take us through the Q&A after the presenter is finished. But before I introduce Colin, our speaker tonight, I'd like to launch a short poll just to find out what people are thinking in this audience tonight. And the question really is, when it comes to building electric vehicles in Canada, what do you think could be our advantage in that market? And I'll mention for folks who might be watching us later that the poll is not visible in the recording. So I will read the answers when we get the respondents to submit. And they're all rolling in now. Pretty sharp group tonight. It's an interesting question because we have a lot going for us in the country, but what really helps us out here in the production of electric vehicles? We're up to about 80%. I'll give it just another minute or so for folks to respond. And it's slowing down. So I think I will flip this around and share the results. Yeah, we've passed 90%, so we'll leave it there. Here are the results. So when it comes to building EVs in Canada, what's our advantage in this room's opinion? 46%, nearly half, think that we have a skilled labor force that would put us at an advantage. A quarter of the room, 24%, said our natural resources are a big asset. About 20% said that we have some pretty advanced technological assets in this country that will help. 7% think that we'll be able to do it at a competitive cost, and 1% had another reason that we might be at an advantage. So that's pretty interesting mix. I appreciate that. I think that Colin, as he goes through his presentation, will be able to perhaps enlighten us a little on that particular area. So let me introduce our guest speaker tonight. A great pleasure. Colin Singh Dhillon is Chief Technical Officer at Canada's Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association and a globally recognized thought leader and innovator. Colin leads connected and autonomous vehicle technology projects and provides support to both the Canadian automotive industry and multiple levels of government on matters of digitization of automobiles, manufacturing, cybersecurity, and smart cities. With over 20 years of experience in the automotive industry, Colin has led design studios, market and communication, corporate social responsibility, and global advanced product development teams for one of Canada's major tier ones. In addition to his position as CTO, Colin has chaired a Canadian Museum and was professor of design and innovation. He is also a member of the prestigious Eyes on Design judging panel at the annual North American International Auto Show. Hey, Colin, welcome to Canada Talks Electric Cars webinar.
Tim, thank you very much to you and to Electric Vehicle Society and Canada Talks Electric Cars team for inviting me on.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. I know it's going to be interesting to hear about this. It's pretty ambitious Canadian electric vehicle project, and I think you're probably the best guy to take us through it. So with that, I'm going to turn the screen over to you and the microphone over to you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, good afternoon, and welcome if you're listening in or watching this from another jurisdiction globally. As Tim said, my role at the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association is focusing on the digitization of our sector. But last year in January, the APMA announced Project Arrow, where we're going to showcase the best of Canada's technology for building electric vehicles / zero emission vehicles. I've got several slides I will be sharing and trying to take you through the journey of Project Arrow. And along the way, I'm happy to provide some context to questions and even to the poll that we just had, which was very interesting, the feedback. So I called the talk tonight the project that launched 1,000 vehicles. Well, guess what? We're going to make one concept vehicle, and that's a little bit of tongue-in-cheek to talk about the capabilities and the potential truly that Project Arrow has, not only for an association like ours, but also for wannabe startup OEMs in Canada. If I was to kind of, peel back maybe a century or so and talk about McLaughlin Motors as being the last time Canada had its own OEMs, or an OEM, then and after we became a major supplier to the Detroit 3 or the Detroit 4 or 5, as it used to be about 70, 80 years ago. And we've continued to. Just 2 years ago, when we talk about Canada and its capabilities of being able to assemble vehicles, our friends at Toyota Canada in Cambridge, Ontario, yet again won the JD Power Award, the Platinum Power Award for their assembly plant. When you get the Platinum Award for building cars, that means it's the best assembly plant globally. Now, Toyota's stand on electric vehicles is more hydrogen fuel cell and plug-in hybrid is where they're heading at the moment. But we've had some phenomenal announcements over the past 3 or 4 months with the likes of Ford and FCA and General Motors announcing the building of their passenger and some commercial vehicles here in Southern Ontario, which really prepares our sector and our supply chain for what's coming next. But we believe at the APMA, it's more than just supporting our members who are the tier 1s, the tier 2s and the tier 3s. We truly feel if there was ever an opportunity for Canada to develop its own Teslas, its own Rivians and Bollinger Motors, then I think we're in that decade. And I think there are going to be some, OEMs emerging from Canada. But really, what better way to demonstrate our capabilities than identifying and recognizing that a vehicle today, ladies and gentlemen, has more to do with your cell phone than it does with a mechanical vehicle from the 1990s. Well, Project Arrow just didn't emerge out of the blue. Project Arrow is a continuation of the demonstration work that the APMA has been doing for several years. Because of the connected vehicle initiatives from about 6 years ago, its success led to the province of Ontario and the OCE, which is now the OCI, coming together and starting the AVEN program, the Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network, which works with multiple jurisdictions, all the way from our friends in Windsor to our friends in Ottawa as well. And we at the APMA are responsible for the demonstration zone of the AVEN program. And so demonstrating technology isn't new to us. And we feel Project Arrow really is just a continuation of the work that's been ongoing over the past several years. So a little bit about Project Arrow for those of you who don't know. Well, first of all, the name Arrow is a tip of the hat to the Avro Aero, a time in the 50s when Canada had the opportunity to potentially be a global leader in a technology, specifically aerospace. You know, there are conspiracies and there are rumors of what happened when Diefenbaker had cancelled. You know, some say it was because the US had said, it doesn't matter how good your technology is, we're not going to buy any of your equipment. And a similar comment and feedback coming from the United Kingdom as well. But the Arrow scientists and the Arrow engineers and technologists that were disbanded ended up putting men on the moon and in space, and also helping, you know, the British develop the Concorde. So we've chosen the name Project Arrow, we've chosen the arrow, and we're pretty confident that we're not going to allow that to happen again. You know, we need to be in charge of our own destiny. That's federally as well as provincially, in order for us to be able to compete in this digital age that we're going to be coming to. But you know, the project itself is also a response to the Zero Emissions Future 2050, as was announced last year by the Prime Minister, where, you know, we feel Canada's electric drive, alternative fuel, and connected autonomous and lightweighting technologies can be showcased to prove that Canada is the place to do automotive business. It's a 2-year project, you know, with 4 phases. Phase 1 is complete, which was the design phase through a competition. What better way to choose the final design of the car than to ask our students from colleges and universities throughout Canada. We were diligent to reach out to pretty much every design course taught at college and university throughout Canada. We had over 22 respondents, 9 were shortlisted, and then those 9 were then shortlisted to a further 3 who were then sent away for an additional 12 weeks to further develop the design for our judges to be able to review. And I'll share a little bit more about the judging panel. We're now currently in phase 2, which I feel is the most important phase, the design specifications and the engineering of the vehicle phase. This is where we actually have to make it work. And our approach to doing this, I will share a bit more details, is going to be done the way cars should be made today. Phase 3 is very close to completion. We should have some announcements this month with our partners out of the Windsor ECDEV, specifically IBLS, and our friends from the VR cave, as I like to call them, the cavemen. They have put together a virtual experience, an immersive experience of the vehicle, which we're going to be looking forward to showcasing. Because of COVID, it will be done virtually, pun intended. If it wasn't COVID, then we would have been traveling, you know, physically around North America and Europe and Asia, showcasing the virtual vehicle to those that are interested. And the final phase will be at the end of 2022, hopefully in early 2023, when we take the physical prototype concept vehicle on a tour globally, starting in North America, then heading to Europe, and then heading over to Asia. And as I'm flicking through the slides, you may be wondering, well, why take it to places like China or Asia or to India? Well, because not only do we want to attract Canadian startups to build their own electric vehicles, but we also want to attract Europe to come over to Canada and to assemble their vehicles. So, you know, we are pretty confident of working diligently to attract the likes of China and maybe the French to consider Canada as an attractive place to build cars. And why not, especially after the NAFTA 2.0 USMCA, the automotive portion of that agreement stands us in good stead for building and developing the next generation of automobiles. But you know, ladies and gentlemen, here you see some sketches by the young team out of Carleton University who were the winners of this competition. You know, and the beautiful thing is none of those 4 students are transportation designers. They are all industrial designers, but they had a passion. The amount of hours and effort they put into this was staggering. And you know, truth be told, my background is design. I was extremely impressed with the quality of work that was undertaken and delivered by the student groups. And here are some of the finished kind of rendering images of the interior of the vehicle. As you can see, you know, Tesla's just showcased their new Model S with a butterfly style steering wheel. Our students had captured this a few months ago on our concept. You see a left paddle screen and a right paddle screen there for the driver, and then for the passenger there is a screen ahead of for his or her viewing, and also one for the rear passengers as well. But the seating on this vehicle, its functions are quite unique, and I'm going to be happy to kind of explain a bit more about that in depth as we go through the presentation. But you know, if you're going to do it, you better do it right, is what I say. And you know, to have the likes of Ralph Gills, the head of design for FCA globally, and Ray Tanguay, to name just 2 of this illustrious list of judges for the design panel, you know, we were honored to have them and to have their opinions. It was a tough decision. The 3 finalists were as good as each other. But it came down to, I think, you know, manufacturability of the vehicle, as well as meeting certain criteria. And as I explain more about the vehicle and how it had to have a essence of Canada, you will understand why that group did win the overall competition. As we do go into phase 2, our build partner is Ontario Tech University out of Oshawa. And their ACE Climatic team are coming on board to help us put this vehicle together. Again, we're building a one-off prototype concept in a physical way. When you do this, you can actually cut corners, as they say. It's not going to have crash test worthiness. It doesn't have to have its body panels made from steel or aluminum. Obviously not, because I'm not going to pay millions of dollars in tooling just to stamp, you know, a single vehicle. I'm going to be using body in black composites to replace what are metallic panels. But the one thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure there is what we call a digital twin of the vehicle. And so the 2 streams will lead us to a physical, which gets to be showcased globally and people can drool over. And in the background, we're going to be working diligently to make sure we've developed a digital twin, which is going to be meeting all crashworthiness tests, all FEA, CFD, CAE requirements. Those all can be met digitally and virtually, and that vehicle will be production ready and production viable. And not only will it showcase the best of technology when it comes to zero emission concept vehicles, working with companies like eCamion and E1 Moly out of British Columbia, who develop battery cells, but we're also making sure the vehicle will be at a minimum level 3 plus autonomous. Its technology that will be embedded will be the best of Canadian technology. You know, for those of you who aren't aware, the Greater Toronto area for the past, I would say 2, if not 3 years now, is generating more tech jobs than Silicon Valley, Washington, DC, and Seattle combined. You know, let that sink in. You know, people brand us as the Silicon Valley of the North. The reality is we are a major hub when it comes to technology. The founding fathers of artificial intelligence, 2 of the 3 are Canadian. When it comes to vehicle cybersecurity, the likes of BlackBerry QNX is a global leader with their technology on over 174 million vehicles worldwide. We have every reason to be proud and to be eager to push projects like Project Arrow in the future. And phase 3 is the immersive phase, where we're able to showcase the technology the vehicle, provide a one-to-one scale understanding, do human factors ergonomic studies by using the virtual reality version of the vehicle. And here you see our good friend Akash from the Windsor IBLS VR cave, working the vehicle. As you see, the doors are quite unique. They've come forward and they split. There is no B pillar, and a lot of that is because of the accessibility we want this vehicle to provide for all occupants. But we are super excited to get behind the goggles, as they say, and to really experience the vehicle through VR. And what we're doing here, ladies and gentlemen, is to make sure we showcase how you build a vehicle today. Everything we're doing is pretty much magnified by the global OEMs on how they're looking at building vehicles today as well. And as I'd mentioned, Phase 4 will be that global unveiling. But it won't be just pull the sheet and let's have a look what's under it. No, we are going to be using virtual reality to showcase the vehicle this year, and in 2022 and 2024, we will be using augmented reality to be able to showcase the hundreds, if not thousands of pieces of technology and hardware that are on this vehicle. So imagine you're a startup company and you've come up with a gear system that goes onto the front of an induction motor. How do companies, how do individuals that are going to be present wherever we showcase this vehicle get to see where you are? Well, you do that by putting on a set of goggles like the Microsoft HoloLens 2.0, or you can simply pick up a cell phone, download the app and point your phone at the vehicle. And depending on where you're pointing, it will start to showcase multiple layers of the supply chain that's on the vehicle. And so, we feel this is going to be one of the best ways to showcase the vehicle for those that are really interested in the details, and also to help promote the Canadian supply chain for those that are interested in using their services. Now, back in, I would say, February of last year, when I was developing the design brief, I asked that the vehicle, reflect Canadian values and have Canadian culture embedded into its design ethos. And the one thing we're going to be doing throughout the next 18 months to 2 years is making this vehicle a caregiver, something that is going to be unique to a Canadian vehicle. I had challenged the students to consider as an example Volvo from Sweden, and how when we think of a Volvo, we appreciate the safety of the vehicle, the quality of the build of the vehicle, and also I think the quality of how objects and items are put together by the Swedes. And so if I ask the globe and people that want to come to Canada, like myself, I am a immigrant who arrived on the shores in 1993 from the UK and never looked back, to be honest, made Canada my home. When we see the volumes of immigration numbers coming through and how many people want to come to this great country of ours, the one thing and the reasons they want to come, I think, have a lot to do with our attitude and our personalities. And so caregiving, I feel, is an integral part of Canadians, and we want to make sure biometric sensory technologies throughout the vehicle, providing care for not only the young, but for the seniors. Not only will the vehicle seats face in one particular position, but all seats will be rotatable, allowing passengers to be able to, ergonomically get in and out of the vehicle. Again, this for us is all part and integral to this vehicle being a caregiver. And so do expect more than just a metallic vehicle that looks phenomenal, which, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'd all have to agree, it does look very, decent. So if you haven't already experienced it, do take in, a overview of the vehicle, its shape, its form. When I asked the students about its stance, the wide wheelbase, one of the students, and again, it may make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, but one of the students reminded me of the stance we took in 1917 at the Vimy Ridge, and said, we've always been able to take a stand and be very sturdy when we do take a stand. The very unique cuts on the front and the rear of the vehicle, which could be challenging when I do aerodynamic testing, those are there because of the rock formations that are found here in our terrain and in Canada. You know, the lights are a signature piece on the front of the vehicle, again there to light up, you know, the road forward for those that are a part of Canada. It's got glass, it's got a metallic bezel around, but it's from the windshield all the way to the back is obviously glass. So people can appreciate places like the Rockies in our province of Alberta. So, you know, it is, and it has been recognized by some global designers to be a beautiful vehicle and a great offering to be Canada's first zero emission concept. I can maybe tell you a little bit about the APMA, but before that, maybe back to the poll that Tim had asked everybody to participate on. The Bloomberg study on lithium-ion battery development rankings that came out a few weeks ago has Canada in 4th place, just behind China, Japan, and South Korea, and ahead of of Germany, the US, and the UK. So we are 4th when it comes to mining the raw materials and having the materials needed to build lithium-ion batteries like cobalt and nickel and lithium. We are positioned. There was a report done about a year or so ago called Mines to Mobility. What we may be lacking is a major global battery manufacturer, you know, opening up in Canada to really set the ball rolling. What we do want to make sure is now that you have the likes of GM, Ford, and FCA announcing the build of their vehicles, we want to make sure that the supply chain is going to be built out as well. And one of the end products of Project Arrow will be a gap analysis, which will be provided to all levels of government to showcase where we have an abundance of technology companies and where we have a lack of. So if there is only one company that does induction motors for passenger vehicles, we know we need more than that. You know, the last thing we want is to have the vehicles assembled in these assembly plants in Ontario and the goods coming in from China and the US, though through the USMCA, 75% is sourced locally, but we want to try and keep as much of that business here in Canada as possible. And the APMA, ladies and gentlemen, have been representing the Canadian parts manufacturers for 69 years now. You know, there is an abundance of industry intelligence. We are there as a lobbying arm for trade and regulatory policy to make sure they are favorable to our sector. As an association, 94% of all parts that are manufactured in Canada are actually manufactured by our members. We are probably a very good place to do a lot of networking when it comes to the private sector and the public sector. Here are some of the names and colleagues that I am proud to be a part of. Flavio Volpe is our president. And we have my colleague Warren Ali, who is the Senior Vice President of Innovations and also the lead on partnerships for Project Arrow, and Jean-Paul Vesco, who is our General Counsel, to name but a few of the team working on Project Arrow. At that, I will hold for questions. Again, thank you very much to the Electric Vehicle Society, and thank you to Tim and the team for inviting me to share Project Arrow.
Awesome, Colin. I'm going to pass things over now to Laura Bryson to walk us through some of the questions. Laura?
Thanks so much, Colin. I'll go in order here as the questions have been upvoted. So we have a question from Craig Sweetnam. He says, Elon Musk keeps going on about prototyping, how prototyping is easy relative to mass manufacturing. How are your members going to overcome the mass manufacturing hurdle to get a full EV built in Canada?
A great question. Yeah, absolutely. Prototyping, building a one-off. Look, we can MacGyver this thing. You know, it can look phenomenal, and it could have, you know, chewing gum holding the panels together. And you know, as we've seen, I drive a Tesla, and some of the body trim is actually off by about 6-7 millimeters between the front door and the rear door. Building mass vehicles, high volume, again, anything over 1,000 units is not easy. But then the reality is we've been building some of the best, and or I should say, assembling some of the best cars in the world here in Ontario over the last 2, if not 3 decades. For the likes of Toyota Canada to win the JD Power Award for the 3rd time just goes to show how good we are at assembling. So when it does come time for a company wanting to start up and build low volume electric vehicles in Canada, I'm sure we'll attract the best of to make sure that they are built as good as they should be. And should be really is the Japanese way.
So that leads into the next question here from Adam L. Is the goal of this project to design the vehicle and find someone like a legacy player to build it?
The goal of the project is to showcase the best of Canadian manufacturing capabilities, which include technology startups all the way through your traditional plastic parts manufacturers like ABC Technologies. But if a startup would like to take what we're working on at the end of Project Arrow, if the startups in Canada would like to understand all of the lessons learned and the milestones we've gone through in order to build an electric vehicle, then we would be more than delighted for Canada to start to control its future destiny, as opposed to leaving it in the hands of foreign OEMs that come to Canada, assemble vehicles, and also get money from the federal and provincial governments.
I see there are actually a couple questions here related to funding. People are wondering what the funding model is.
Great question. So presently, we are working both with the province of Ontario to repurpose funding, and we're also working with the federal government to look at being awarded funding for the project. And the funding we're hoping will cover obviously the administration, the development of the project, but not only that, we're hoping the likes of FedDev and other federal associations stepping up to help provide a percentage of the funds required to build low-cost tooling to provide, you know, additive manufacturing, 3D printing of parts and such. And so if a company is interested in coming onto the Project Arrow, I would implore you to go to projectarrow.ca and then go to the resources page. And once you're there, you can register your company through the NDA and then the RFP process.
Next question from Doug Beckett. Is this a battery EV or a hydrogen fueled EV?
Great question, Doug. So yes, this is a skateboard lithium-ion battery tech EV. Though we have been in talks with a few organizations out of Alberta and British Columbia, and we'd be happy to look at further developing the same project and on a different platform. So why not showcase a hydrogen fuel cell powertrain? Why not showcase a solid state battery powertrain? But at the moment, we are going after the low-hanging fruits where there is some volume of supply chain, which is battery lithium-ion cells.
Awesome. We've got a question here from Sean Hart. In what ways does Project Arrow recognize the sometimes challenging Canadian climate and landscape?
Yeah, great question. Again, one of the things I've been tweeting over the past few years when we see Waymo and Tesla and others testing in Arizona and in California is, look, that's one season. Come to Canada, you know, we'll give you all 4 seasons. So, you know, there are ways of using, outwardly developed technologies. So a vehicle today, an autonomous vehicle today is nothing without the smart infrastructure. I wrote an article a few years ago when I first joined the APMA, which was called Smart Cars, Dumb Infrastructure, because everybody was asking me, hey, when are we going to see autonomous vehicles? I said, when we improve the infrastructure. And so in order for autonomous vehicles to work, I feel you're not only going to have the technology embedded on the vehicle inwardly, but outwardly, you're going to have to make sure your infrastructure, your roads, your highways are actually intelligent as well. And so whether we're getting snow like we do or folks do over in Calgary, or whether it's kind of rain in British Columbia, we are developing this with all the sensory technology available to make sure it would be a level 3+ when it comes to autonomous technology, and meets and can be driven in Canadian weather.
So for those that aren't as familiar with the different levels of autonomous vehicles, could you explain what level 3+ is?
Absolutely. So level 0 is a Model T. Level 5 is there is no steering wheel and there are no pedals. And so really level 1 to level 2 to level 3, I would say level 4 and level 5 are identical. The only difference is one has pedals and a steering wheel, the other one doesn't. And so when you hear in the media and in the press and on social media about a level 3 or a level 4, if somebody's talking level 4, and today China is talking level 4, they are about to release a small shuttle bus on their highways in one of their provinces, which they deem to be a level 4 autonomous. When it's level 4, it's basically saying you do not need an occupant to even sit behind the steering wheel for safety reasons. A Tesla today, even with its new chipset, I would say is a level 2+, just for context. So the Teslas that we all have today and the software that's been released today, I know Elon's going to be releasing some updates and upgrades in the next few months, which will make it potentially a level 3. But today, your Teslas are a level 2+ only.
Looks like we have lots of questions coming in. So just a reminder to everyone to review the questions that are there and upvote them so we can ask the questions that are most popular. Let's see here next from Glenn Gary. Colin, does USMCA mean that Canadian built cars will still be seen as American when it comes to cross-border cooperation in manufacture and sales?
Well, cross-border manufacturing is something that's been going on since NAFTA 1.0. A typical vehicle today can cross the border, over half a dozen, if not a dozen times. And so that will continue. For an example, if Tim Burrows, our friend, was going to open up an OEM facility in Canada, his market will be the US. The market share will be the US and the NAFTA region. But the reality is Tim would have to make sure the vehicle is developed as a global platform, because you don't want it to just be sold in North America. You want to make sure it is sold in the largest EV market in the world, which is China. And so if a startup was to take on an EV initiative, they need to be reading the tea leaves from China.
We have a question here from Michael Hewitt. Might be a bit off topic. It's about a company called Havlar Canada. Did you know that Havlar Canada unveiled the Bison in 2017 as Canada's first all-electric pickup, built and tested here in Ontario? I guess he's wondering if anyone knows where this project where it is now, promising 100 fleet vehicles for testing.
So yes, absolutely. Havlar and Tony and Frank Russell are very good friends of the APMA, and they will be partners on Project Arrow. So yes, Havlar developed the Bison to showcase technology, and yes, it was built in Ontario, specifically around the GTA area. The difference is that their parts and components weren't necessarily all Canadian. And that is the one thing we are trying to do here in Canada, is to try and make this as close to 100% Canadian where we can. And so that's one of the big differences. But the work that they're doing on induction charging is globally, is a global leading technology. And so we are very proud to have Havilar as one of our partners on the Project Arrow team.
Great. Hendrik is asking, what are the range specs for the project?
Great question. We are to finalize those, but I think it's a minimum of, you're looking now about 500 kilometers on an SUV vehicle of that size. So you're looking at 500 kilometers of charging distance, and I'm just kind of going through some thoughts. We are also going to be, trying to make the charging time as low as possible. China last week announced a vehicle that can charge fully in less than 5 minutes. It's not a myth. It's not a myth. It's actually coming. Experts are saying within 5 years. And so, the one, thing that definitely is there, I have it with my Tesla, is range anxiety. Especially in winter, you've got 100 kilometers on there and it's -8 out there. And if you haven't pre-warmed up your batteries, you might as well take 40% off the top. So we are looking at, technologies which will make the charging period time shorter than what it potentially is today.
We have a potentially controversial question here from John. The parts manufacturers in Canada have been fighting the introduction of EVs. When did this attitude change, and can you be sure that it has changed?
I wouldn't necessarily they've been fighting the introduction. I've spent 19 years in the parts sector before arriving just over 2 years ago at the APMA. The pushback may have been on low volumes. So even today, the pushback or a comment from Toyota may be that, hey, it's great that Ford and GM and Chrysler are all jumping onto lithium ion battery cell technology electric vehicles, but are their volumes going to be, in the tens of thousands or the hundreds of thousands? And so as a part supplier, you want the higher volume work, which obviously means you can, potentially generate more revenue and income. So that was always the pushback. But when the inevitable happens and the sector begins to go electric, General Motors announcing 2 days ago that before 2035 they'll cancel all internal combustion engines. It means there's going to be that transition. And one of the best examples has to be Magna International. They have been positioning themselves well over this past several years, and they continue to be a global leader when it comes to the automotive sector and how to do it right.
You sort of alluded to this with this last question here, but a question from Keith Beckley. What is the general feeling in APMA about the transition to EV manufacturing? Concern, delight, terror, opportunity, or all of the above?
Good question. I'd probably say opportunity, because for some reason, if I describe it this way, it may kind of, set a light bulb off on top of your heads. But for some reason, autonomous vehicles are intertwined with electric vehicles. When you visualize autonomous vehicle technology, for some reason, you don't visualize it on an internal combustion engine vehicle. And so with the boost in electric vehicle development, you will see a correlation and a boost in autonomous vehicle technology as well. And they are both opportunities specifically for Canada. A vehicle today, as I said in the presentation, if those can see my cell phone, your vehicle has a lot more to do with this today than it does with a car from the 1990s. You have multiple ECUs, up to 80 electronic control units are found on a car today. You've got thermal management as one of the new growing, subsection business units to try and keep the temperature of the vehicle down because of all of these ECUs that are generating heat. And obviously electric vehicles are going to be doing that as well. And so again, opportunity. We feel that Canada can do what Tesla has done, what Rivian is about to do, and what Robert with Bollinger Motors is about to do in the US. So, you know, let's control our own destiny, I say.
We've got another question here from Keith. Why does Ontario have some of the best auto manufacturing plants? Better training, bigger brains, better government support, I should say.
Well, the government's definitely better here now than it was a few weeks ago, compared to our cousins south of the border, he says. Listen, our education system, our immigration policy, and our mindsets, our culture, there is a difference. There is a lot of similarities, but there are differences. You know, we have been assembling cars here, I think 4 years after Henry Ford first began the Model T. You know, we've got a history of over 117 years of assembling vehicles. You know, we haven't just started, and there's a reason why they don't pull it all out, because when you look at the build and the quality awards that are provided to their assembly plants in Canada, they're the highest. Ford's assembly plant in Oshawa was one of their best in North America. Same for Ford Oakville, same for Brampton and Windsor FCA. It's also down to immigration. Let's face it. How many times have we read articles of doctors coming in from developing countries who aren't able to get certification, so they're driving cabs, they're working in assembly plants. You know, there is a lot to be said about who is assembling cars here in Canada. And now technology is about to give us a boost. As I said earlier, we are generating more tech jobs than Silicon Valley, Seattle, and DC combined. Like, let that sink in. Combined. And so, we are positioned, because of many things. Our academic institutions are some of the best. Our students, we've been complaining of the brain drain for, I would say, over 2 decades. Well, let me tell you this. I can't share the details yet, but I can definitely tell you this, that the APMA will be making an announcement in a few months' time where we will showcase a brain reversal. We're able to attract some of the best designers, best engineers to Project Arrow. When we announce who the chief engineer will be on Project Arrow, I totally expect some of these to drop down to the ground and to be, how did they attract that individual? It's because of what Canada has to offer. And the APMA is fortunate because it all kind of bubbles up and crescendos at the APMA. We're able to see all the different sectors, whether they be out in British Columbia or Jeff Doan at Dalhousie University, Nova Scotia. We're able to understand what's going on. And then we're able to take that and create the concentrate from that and provide that, which is really the best of the best.
Next, from Ilya Doronin, we have BlackBerry here in Waterloo, Ontario, who is making automotive software. Are you cooperating or planning to cooperate with BlackBerry? So
BlackBerry, or QNX, is already a partner of ours on the AVEN initiative. And their SDP 7.0 operating system is what we use to put into a existing vehicle. And what we then do is we add other infotainment software, technology software, cybersecurity encrypted software, autonomous vehicle sensory software onto their operating system, because it's the best in the world. It's the most secure. And like I said on my presentation, they're actually on over 174 million vehicles worldwide. So yes, BlackBerry and QNX will be playing roles, and they continue to play a role with the APMA.
Boy, this is a marathon, Colin. I don't think we've had that many questions from a guest speaker. Are you good to go just a few minutes longer, or?
I am good to go. I am good to go, Tim.
Okay, we'll let her go a couple more questions and we'll wrap up. Thanks, Laura.
Sounds good. We've got a couple back-to-back questions about specs. So from Pat Troy, he asks, what reference are you using for engineering standards, vibration specs, environmental durability, etc.?
So again, FMVSS is the standard governing body, and so we will be using their standards. But as I'd mentioned, the one-off prototype concept won't go through the crash and vibration, noise, vibration, harshness tests, but our virtual vehicle will go through those. And for those that aren't aware, the province of Ontario is also looking at providing a regulation which allows any vehicle that's produced in low volume, that's under 1,000 units annually, to be able to do its crash testing virtually. And those vehicles that meet the crash test virtually can be driven throughout North America. So it's not just saying, well, you did the test virtually in Canada, you can't drive that vehicle in North America. No, you can. And so we will be following all of those standards. And again, my background is more design and innovation and technology. So those questions would be answered in detail by our chief engineer.
We have a question from Jordan Carbone. In terms of the tech going into this vehicle, have any of the Tesla's public patents been helpful?
Good question. To be honest, we actually haven't done a deep dive into public IPs, and we may. But to be honest, we already have, through the RFP process, I believe we already have over 150 interested companies, and of those, if I did a quick crunch of numbers, I would say about 70 are tech companies, software, hardware tech companies. The one area we are going to get very excited about, and we are going to be really making a lot of noise around, is the vehicle as a caregiver. We want to make sure we own that space, because other vehicles may have some pieces of technology, but we want it to be embedded into the seating, into your A pillar, into, if you have a B pillar, into the B pillar, and around, sensory optical cameras that are looking at you and recognize that you're stressed, and recognize you're about to have a medical issue, and they're able to then take you to a place for care. And so there is so much that we want to explore when it comes to the vehicle as a caregiver.
Sounds good. I think we are going to wrap it up with that.
That's awesome. Thanks. Thank you very much, Laura. And thank you, Colin. That's really, really interesting. It's just so great to have someone with your experience and background and exposure to the industry come on and tell us about this. I, for one, was not aware of the capability of a virtual model to sort of advance a project like this so far. And that's fascinating to hear about that.
Yeah, our students as well, Tim, they said to us when they were doing the final designs, they had two of the team members wearing the VR goggles and designing in VR. And then the other two were actually inputting it into CAD. And they said if they didn't have the VR, then they could not have met the deadline, And that was just repeated by Ralph Gills, the head of FCA. They said that's exactly how we're doing it as well. So, virtual immersive technology has a role to play. It's playing a role today because of COVID, travel restrictions. How is General Motors or how is Toyota approving the PPAP process, of parts meeting their requirements? They're doing it using immersive technologies like augmented and virtual.
Yeah, amazing, just amazing. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It's deeply appreciated, Colin. And thank you also, Laura, again, for
and yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks to you too, Laura, for taking care of the questions this week, and thanks to the rest of the team that works behind the scenes to put on this webinar every month. Really a great group. So I'm going to ask the audience, please remember to come back for another episode of the webinar next month on March 2nd, same time, same channel. We're going to be hearing from Dr. Sheldon Williamson, who's Canada Research Chair, Electric Energy Storage and Transportation Electrification at Ontario Tech University. So there you go, Colin. There's a link to your talk tonight, and I think that Dr. Williamson will be a very interesting speaker for our group. It's truly amazing to see so much support for these monthly webinars. Public interest and curiosity about electric vehicles is growing rapidly, and we're humbled to be providing a place for folks to learn more about the transition. It's also rewarding to see that a healthy number of attendees to the webinar are participating with us for the very first time. So that's pretty nice to see. Thank you all. And please continue to let your friends and family know about the webinar. From all of us at the Electric Vehicle Society, and until next month, please stay safe and stay well. This will conclude today's webinar.